YGZs, Young Gunnaz, a true docs breakdown based on public information and news reports. Chapter 1. The Bronx Before the Rise, Early 2000s. In the early 2000s, the Bronx was a landscape of dozens of small neighborhood crews. Every housing project had its own identity, problems, and rivalries. Poverty, underfunded schools, and the lingering effects of the crack era created an ecosystem where youth crews often became the center of social order. At the time, gangs were shifting from older, more structured street groups toward younger, hyper-local crews. Drill culture hadn't arrived yet, but the seeds were there. Music, reputation, and social media would soon become part of gang identity. It's in this environment that the foundations of YGZ, Young Gunnaz, began. Chapter 2. Origins of the Young Gunnaz, 2003-2006. YGZs did not begin with one charismatic founder or a formal ceremony. Unlike groups such as the United Blood Nation, the Young Gunnaz emerged organically, starting as a bunch of connected young crews in several Bronx housing projects. Between 2003 and 2006, prosecutors would later state that the Young Gunnaz were operating as a violent Bronx street gang centered around South Bronx housing developments, small clusters of young teens, and older big homies, a reputation for being willing to ride, meaning to confront rivals or defend turf with violence. The name Young Gunnaz reflected the identity: young, fearless, heavily armed, and ready to prove themselves. By the mid-2000s, the acronym YGZ was firmly established across multiple projects. Chapter 3. What YGZ stands for: YGs equal Young Gunnaz. Gunnaz refers to shooters, a name signaling that its younger members were fearless and willing to use guns in conflict. It was never a traditional gang with a massive citywide hierarchy. Instead, it became a label, a shared identity, used by multiple sets across the Bronx and even upstate New York. Each set operated independently but shared the name, cultural identity, reputation for gun violence, recognition across rival crews. This shared title helped the brand spread rapidly. Chapter 4. The rank structure. Unlike older gangs with rigid rank ladders, the Young Gunnaz developed a flexible, street-driven structure. The titles varied set to set, but the roles were widely consistent. 1. Big homies. Older members with status and influence. They handled decision-making, mediated disputes, and gave green lights for retaliation. 2. Set heads. Coordinators. Mid-level members who organized drug operations, movements of younger members, and communication with other sets. 3. Shooters. Stepas. The most active young members. They handled rides, drills, retaliation, and enforcing discipline. Their reputation raised their standing inside the gang. 4. Trappers. Hustlers. Members more focused on drug sales than violence. They contributed money to the set. 5. Youngins. Little homies. Newest and youngest affiliates. They ran errands, learned the hierarchy, and sought to prove themselves. This structure allowed YGZ sets to grow quickly and adapt, even when leaders were incarcerated. Chapter 5. The colors and visual identity. Unlike traditional LA-based sets, YGs did not rely on one strict color. Their identity aligned with modern Bronx drill culture, which emphasizes dark clothing, black and gray hoodies, designer jackets, Montclair, puffers, techwear, ski masks, and face coverings. Occasional red accents in certain subsets with blood affiliations, occasional green heart imagery, and graphics in online edits or music visuals. The gang's identity was expressed more through hand signs, music videos, and crew symbols than through classic gang colors. Chapter 6. Expansion through sets, 2006 to 2015. By the late 2000s and early 2010s, YGZ was no longer a single gang centered in one project. It had become a network. Major sets included 1. Maria Lopez Plaza YGZ, one of the earliest sets linked to heavy gun violence and drug distribution. 2. River Park Towers, RPT-YGs, a powerful set headquartered in the Twin Towers overlooking the major Deegan Expressway. 3. Two Fly YGs, Eastchester Gardens, one of the most famous subsets based in the Eastchester Gardens housing development and nearby Valley area. 4. 800 YGs, West Farms, the set based around 800 East 180th Street, known in the 2020s for major shootings. 5. Hudson Valley YG, Young Gunnaz sets extended into Newburgh, Poughkeepsie, Middletown. These upstate expansions were tied to drug trafficking, migration, and prison networks. Each set operated independently but flew the YG's identity. Chapter 7. The Era of Violence and Prosecutions, 2010-2020. Between roughly 2010 and 2020, YGs became one of the most monitored and targeted gangs in New York. What they were involved in: crack and heroin distribution, robberies, shootings with rivals, targeted killings, violent beefs involving other Bronx crews, key prosecutions. On the Two Fly Takedown, 2016, one of the largest NYC gang takedowns ever, members were charged with racketeering firearms offenses, narcotics trafficking, shootings around Eastchester Gardens and the Valley, River Park Towers. Case: multiple YGZ members charged in a narcotics and firearms conspiracy tied to the towers. Hudson Valley, 34-count indictment. Over 24 members indicted for shootings, drug operations, robberies, RICO conspiracy. Individual shooter sentences. Several members from various sets received 25 years, 33 years, life equivalent sentences for murders, attempted murders, and firearms charges. Law enforcement quickly realized that YGZ wasn't one gang, it was a franchise, and each set required separate operations to dismantle. Chapter 8. The Digital Era, Music, Social Media, and Identity, 2020-2024. As Bronx drill music exploded, YG's members, especially younger ones, began appearing in drill tracks, music videos, social media posts, group photos showing identity and allegiance. The imagery featured masks, dark clothing, YGZ, text graphics, green heart emojis, sets tagged by name 2Fly, RPT 800. This visibility increased their influence, but also their vulnerability, as law enforcement began monitoring videos for clues tied to active investigations. Chapter 9. The 800 YG's Indictment, April 2025. This chapter marks one of the biggest and most recent actions against a YG set. What happened? In April 2025, authorities announced a 73-count indictment targeting 20 members of the 800 YGs set in the West Farms area of the Bronx. Charges included 1 murder, 14+ non-fatal shootings, gun possession and trafficking robberies, conspiracy to commit violent crimes. Endangering the public with broad daylight gunfire locations. Mentioned shootings took place near schools, in courtyards, around bus stops, in densely populated streets. The message from authorities described 800 YGs as having terrorized the West Farms neighborhood, calling the area an open-air shooting gallery. Adults and children were forced to run from gunfire in multiple incidents. Officials said the takedown was meant to restore safety and serve as a model for future large-scale gang interventions. Why it matters. This indictment shows YGZ remains active decades after its emergence. Law enforcement has shifted to high-intensity, multi-defendant conspiracy cases. Focus is now on dismantling entire sets, not just individual shooters. Chapter 10. Closing thoughts. The arc of YGs. From a loose street crew in the early 2000s to a well-known name across the Bronx and upstate New York, the Young Gunnaz became both a product and a reflection of their environment. Their history is marked by generational poverty, the influence of housing project culture, the rise of drill music, cycles of retaliation, and heavy law enforcement pressure. The April 2025 indictment symbolizes a new chapter, the latest in a long line of attempts to dismantle YGZ sets and reduce gun violence in the Bronx. Yet the legacy of the Young Gunnaz, their music, their identity, and their history, remains a significant part of the modern story of Bronx street culture.